يعني انه لازم احنا ندخل من هذه البوابات وهي البوابات ما بتنحط على ابواب الصلاه او مسجد او الاقصى خصوصا، يعني احنا عشان هيك بنرفضها، وهذا راح بعدين بصير امر واقع. احنا بدنا نحاول انه هاي البوابات تنزاح.
Another day of tensions, arrests and scuffles around the entrance to Al-Aqsa Mosque. A group of worshippers intending to pray in front of the mosque compound were barred entry to the old city, security forces pushing them back down the street. Israel defends the extra security measures as a necessary response to Friday's attack, in which 2 Israeli security forces members were killed, along with the 3 Israeli Palestinians who opened fire on them. The Israeli Prime Minister is insisting that not only will these metal detectors stay in place, but Israel will also erect security cameras overlooking the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. For the Waqf Committee, which runs the mosque, for many Muslims around the world, that represents Israeli encroachment on a very important holy site. The longer this standoff runs without resolution, the more dangerous it becomes. Jews believe the compound, which they call the Temple Mount, is the site of the first and second Jewish temples. Right-wing religious nationalists and settlers routinely call for the imposition of full Israeli control here. And they make pilgrimages to it. On Monday, for the first time, without any escorts from the Islamic Waqf Authority. Some celebrated it online as a historic day.
And we're continuing to make sure and guard the status quo on the Temple Mount being open to Muslims who will go through security measures, open to visitors, tourists, as well as Jews.
In the occupied Old City, there has long been a program of Israeli home buying, which Palestinians see as a strategy of changing facts on the ground ahead of any negotiated settlement. The fear among some Palestinian Muslim activists is that what Israel says is a security measure, which won't change the delicate status quo at the mosque, is in fact an attempt to do just that.
Today in the morning, settlers were wandering in the empty courtyards of the Al-Aqsa, and at the same time, none of the gates were closed. What do you mean the status quo hasn't changed? You want the Muslims not to enter at all?
By late afternoon, security forces decided to allow prayers where earlier they'd prevented them, but all sides are aware that this crisis won't be over until prayers resume inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, occupied East Jerusalem. On Sunday morning, Israeli police were preparing to reopen the gates to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, but with a new addition, metal detectors, part of intensified security following Friday morning's attack in a site known to Jews as the Temple Mount. It was soon clear that the managers of the mosque didn't see a security measure, rather an attempt to impose Israeli sovereignty.
We reject any changes as we refuse to be remembered as the ones who have accepted those changes to Al-Aqsa Mosque. We will stay outside until we get back Al-Aqsa Mosque the way it was when we were forced out of it.
Well, the Sheikh has made it clear that he sees these metal detector gates as totally unacceptable and illegitimate. Here he comes now. We wait to see how this confrontation proceeds. Beyond the melee, brief talks ended in a standoff between clerics and the police, between Israelis and Palestinians, that has the potential to spread. The Israeli government says the nature of the attack on Friday, in which 2 policemen were killed and weapons used inside a sacred site, necessitated the response, which began with the closing of the mosque for Friday prayers for the first time in nearly 50 years. But if the expectation was that tensions would ease with the mosque's reopening, the effect has been the opposite.
We're not going through airports, we're not going through another country, we're just going to practice our right of worshiping God, to pray to God. That's all we need. We're not asking for anything else. People did some wrong. Why punishing the whole country? Why punishing the whole Islam community? Why punishing the whole Palestinian community? That's not right.
Israeli police said 500 Muslim worshippers visited Al-Aqsa on Sunday.
Israel is making sure that we are guarding and protecting the status quo of the Temple Mount area. There are no changes whatsoever to the status quo.
but the mosque leadership says they won't enter until the new measures are lifted, even if that means there are no prayers inside Islam's third holiest site for a second consecutive Friday. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, in occupied East Jerusalem.
The mosque are now refusing to pray there, objecting to the new Israeli measures. So let's take a look at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The site is home to two of the most important sites in Islam, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but it's also claimed by Jews for whom it's called Temple Mount. In 1967, Israel occupied East Jerusalem and later annexed the area in a decision that was not recognized by the United Nations. After a peace treaty in 1994, Israel accepted Jordan as the compound's custodian. But Jordan's stewardship actually dates back 70 years before that to an agreement between Palestinian leaders and the Jordanian king's great-grandfather. Under this current arrangement, Jews pray at the western wall of the compound and Muslims at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Non-Muslims are allowed to visit at certain hours, but not pray there. Palestinians face severe restrictions if they want to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. And now new security measures will mean even more intensive searches irrespective of age and gender. Men under the age of 40 are at times told by Israeli forces they cannot enter the mosque for Friday prayers. Sometimes only children and women of all ages and men over 40 are allowed through the checkpoints. It is a long and stressful journey, especially if worshipers are coming from the occupied Palestinian territories. If coming from Gaza, it's almost impossible. For example, let's take a Palestinian traveling from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. A 19-kilometer journey can take more than an hour and a half. At the Al-Khalidiyah checkpoint, they can be delayed, stopped, and denied entry. If they make it to Jerusalem, there are various Israeli security points to pass through before they can enter the compound. Let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Tel Aviv, Gideon Levy, columnist of the Haaretz newspaper and author of The Punishment of Gaza. And Ramallah, Mustafa Barghouti, Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative. And in West Jerusalem, Mohammed Nusaba, senior member of the Aqwaf Authorities and Islamic High Committee. Welcome to everybody. Gideon, I want to start with you. Do you think that Israel was justified in closing the mosque?
No, I think that Israel is doing some measures, but I think that even the current government in Israel, which is a nationalistic and a right-wing government, understands the sensitivity, and they are trying now their best to pull out, and to try to get back to the status quo, because we are dealing with such an explosive material that even the Israeli government understands it.
Mustafa, do you agree with that? Do you think that the Israeli government is using a measured approach, or what do you think about them closing down the mosque?
No, I think the Israeli government is using the incident to consolidate further its control in the area. And probably they have already prepared plans that they are trying to implement to change the nature of the situation in the Aqsa Mosque. By the way, status quo is not acceptable to us, because what is status quo? Status quo is a situation where 95% of Palestinians, including myself, are prohibited from entering Jerusalem, are prohibited from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque. 95% of Palestinian Muslims and Christians are deprived from their right of free prayer, whether in Al-Aqsa Mosque or in the Sepulchral Church, or anywhere in any other religious site. In a way, what we see today is a system of apartheid, a system of racial discrimination. And now Israel wants to use the most recent incident to enhance its control and to create much more obstacles for Palestinians. No country in the world has ever closed down a whole town because of an incident. Israel did not only close the Aqsa Mosque, which is something that never happened since 50 years, but it went further and more to close down practically the whole old city. And so many residents of the old city could not get back to home till today noon. This is unacceptable, and it's a behavior that reflects a very deep racist discrimination.
Okay, Mustafa, we're actually going to come back to some of the points that you brought up, specifically addressing what the status quo is. But before we do, Mohammed, I want to give you a chance to react as well to Israel's decision to close the mosque. Your thoughts on that?
Well, to start with, what the Israeli authorities are doing, closing the mosque, is first of all illegal and contrary to all human rights conditions. A holy place is a place that should be open to all those faithful who want to go and pray there. It's not going into a battle to be searched or searched by going through an electronic door. But to talk about the status quo, this status quo specifically, what has been mentioned, is not regarding all the problem, the Palestinian problem. It's regarding the status quo in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's something that the authorities ought to be, should stick to. It was through the status quo that was originally in 1984 for all arrangements in this area, and everybody has been sticking to status quo in that area since then. In addition, the Jordan-Israeli agreement have mentioned this status quo to be strictly stuck to during the period of the agreement. So it is in violation of three things: the Israeli-Jordanian peace agreement, the violation of human rights, and thirdly, violation of the status quo.
Mohammed,
So
if I could,
the Israelis
if I could get in for just a moment, we actually
Yes.
We're going to come back to that in just a moment. But you mentioned the metal detectors, and that's actually something that I wanted to direct to Gideon for a moment. Gideon, on the surface, it seems that metal detectors would simply be about safety. But do you think that is that a charged move, a complicated move, possibly a volatile move by the Israeli government to put metal detectors at a religious site like that?
First of all, let's remember that Al-Aqsa is under the Israeli occupation like any other place in the occupied territories. And when I was speaking about the status quo, I was speaking about the status quo of occupation, which is illegal and criminal and not just, and everything you mentioned. And the security measures that Israel is trying to take are security measures against resistance to the occupation. And we know very well that resistance to the occupation will continue, because any occupation meets resistance, and no occupation in the world can overcome a resistance. And therefore, those measures, even though they are technical measures, and maybe they are motivated by really some kind of motivation to avoid such incidents like the Friday's incident, by the end of the day, as long as Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem, East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza will continue to be under occupation, the resistance will continue, and incidents like this will continue, and no measures will prevent it. No measures in the world.
Mustafa, your thoughts or your reaction to this? How will the presence of metal detectors resonate with Palestinians?
Well, I totally agree that, of course, the main problem is occupation. And without ending the occupation and the system of apartheid that Palestinians are subjected to, there will be no calm. And of course, there will be no peace, and Palestinians will continue to suffer in a way that nobody ever has suffered in the same manner. Even people who are visiting us from South Africa say that what you have today under Israeli occupation is a much worse system of apartheid than what they had there. And that was a very bad situation anyhow. The metal detectors, in my opinion, is one way of Israel in making more obstacles to Palestinians from entering the mosque. Let's remember that Israel has violated so many agreements and arrangements and the status of Aqsa Mosque by allowing so many illegal Israeli settlers to enter the mosque. And in my opinion, Israel is using this new incident to create more obstacles for Palestinians and to change the situation so that Israeli illegal settlers would enter the mosque and probably start to pray there. In my opinion, the ultimate goal of Israel is to change the situation of Al-Aqsa Mosque like they did in the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron, which happened after an Israeli terrorist called Goldstein committed a massacre against 29 Palestinian prayers who were praying. This is unacceptable. These Israeli measures are unacceptable. I cannot imagine how during Ramadan, for instance, the detectors would allow Palestinians to enter the mosque. The crowd will be so big and the lines will be so huge that it would be practically impossible for Palestinians to enter the mosque. So these measures, in my opinion, are only to create more obstacles for Palestinians.
Mohammed, do you think that even though the mosque has been reopened, it is slowly being reopened, do you still think the groundwork is there for this to become even more unstable, even more volatile?
It will be far worse. It will be far worse. It will never be stable if we lose control of the sovereignty and control of everything on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This thing has, the Israelis attempted to do this sort of thing in 1990 after a massacre that took place at that time and was perpetrated by the Israeli forces. At that time, I remember that the Israeli police chief came and met with us. They requested that, or said they wanted to install electronic doors, as they've done today. And we told them then, as we repeated again now, we will not and will never accept electronic doors to be installed at the entrance to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's a holy sovereign area controlled by the Arabs, the Palestinians, the Muslims, through the previous status quo and through agreements that have been connected with the Jordanian peace treaty. So this will not be accepted. It will not make the place more safe, because safe to who?
Okay,
Israelis don't pray there. The Muslims go and pray there. So would it be put in order to make safety to the Palestinian prayers, worshippers over there? The whole thing doesn't make sense.
First of all, closing the mosque is an extreme measure that Israel was always very careful not to do. And Israel feels today strong enough and to do it. And you see also that the Arab and Muslim world was quite reluctant and was not very active in its protest. But by the end of the day, I repeat myself, even the right-wing Israeli government understands that we are dealing maybe with the most sensitive and explosive place in the world. And as long as Israel wants to maintain the occupation as it does, it will do anything possible to calm things down, because an explosion in Al-Aqsa Mosque might bring the end of the occupation.
What about that, Mustafa? What about Gideon's point that perhaps it's in Israel's best interest not to tamp this up?
Well, I don't think that level of wisdom is always available in the minds of the Israeli leaders. We remember very well how Ariel Sharon entered the mosque in 2000, practically provoking a whole intifada, a whole uprising, which led to very serious actions, including reoccupation of all Palestinian towns and cities and massacres in many places. I don't think they have this wisdom, and I think what they are doing today by closing the mosque and by trying to impose these metal detectors and changing many new things, what they are trying to do is to test the Arab world and the Muslim world. They want to test what would be the reaction, and if the reaction is not strong enough, they would probably proceed with more very serious measures. I remember in '96, you mentioned '96, at that time the same prime minister was there, Netanyahu, and he used tanks and helicopters against us. I was, as a medical doctor in my white coat, treating an injured person when a sniper shot me twice with high-velocity bullets. I still carry these shrapnels. So this man is not the most wise leader in the world, and I am sure if he feels that the Arab world and the Islamic world is not responding by punitive actions against Israel, if punishment is not taken against Israel, if sanctions are not used against Israel, they will proceed with more violations, and they will completely undermine the stability not only of the area here, but the stability in the whole region. It's a very dangerous policy. It's a very dangerous government.
We don't want the conflict to spread into a religious conflict. But what the Israeli government is doing, and although you say they are sensitive to the issue, they don't seem to be sensitive at all. They ought to know that a place like the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest place in Islam. And being such, people would react far more violently, I'm sure. And it's only early days, first day, second day, third day, and you don't know what will happen after that.
I don't think so. I think that the Arab world right now is preoccupied with other issues. I see it throughout the whole maintenance of the occupation, as to be said. The Arab world became very passive and quite lost interest, and I say it with a lot of sorrow, I must say. The Arab world and the Islamic world quite lost interest in the struggle against the occupation, and there are new actors and new interests playing there, and the Arab world is much more preoccupied with Iran and with domestic questions rather than with this. They will, as usual, pay their lip services, which they always do, but I don't see it getting into a real explosion if nothing will happen in the coming days. If it will remain as it is now, I don't think, and hopefully I'm right, I don't think that this will lead to an international explosive event. I think it will be very soon forgotten if nothing will happen in the coming days.
Okay. Mustafa, what role does Jordan have in this as custodians of this site? What would you like to see from them? What can they really do?
Well, first of all, let me say about the whole Arab and Muslim world, I do agree that maybe our expectations are not very high. But I must say that the embarrassment is very high to all the Arab and Islamic regimes today. It's a very serious embarrassment. And I am sure this will affect many of the Israeli plans for normalization. I think this will become much more difficult in the coming days and months, probably because of the Israeli behavior. But that doesn't mean there is no reaction. On the contrary, I think the Palestinian issue is becoming more and more of a human issue of the whole world. And that's why we see the rise of the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, the BDS movement, which even some Jewish activists are joining. In a way, as Nelson Mandela said once, the Palestinian issue is becoming the most important moral issue of the world. And that is very encouraging, of course, to us. On the issue of Jordan, I think Jordan has big responsibility as a custodian of the Islamic sites. Israel's imposition of things like detectors and new regiments and even closing the mosque are by themselves a very serious violation of the custodian agreements and of the Jordanian responsibilities. That's why I know that the Jordanians have been communicating with the Israelis, but I think the Israeli behavior has created very big anger in Jordan itself. And one should not underestimate in any way the effect on the public, not only in Jordan, but also in the Arab and Islamic world in general. The embarrassment is very high.
Do you think, terrorists in front of me, do you think that Israelis want to destroy Al-Aqsa?
I think the extremists, yes.
Well,
there is extremists and there is
I know
regular
some people
Israelis.
who want to throw me out as well.
Huh? I would say regular Israelis don't. Extremists would like to, but they won't be able at that time because of the government issues. So it's not going to be. It's not an easy thing.
What do you mean the government? Sorry?
The government doesn't want to destroy now. If they did, they would probably done it before. So it's not politically
I tell you
correct.
something, okay? Many Muslims believe it's going to be destroyed, and the temple is going to be rebuilt. Yep. So I think that's what's going to happen if you look at the rules and the policies. Well, based on what?
Or divided at first.
Like what happens in Hebron, then I think it's going to be destroyed.
But it's already divided.
It's already divided, yes, but still, Jews can't go. Okay, but the specific question is, we won't get into division. The specific question is whether there is a plan, whether people want to destroy the Haram al-Sharif for the Muslims and build a third temple, and is there a plan? That's the question.
Okay, I don't know if it's a plan or not. I don't work as an archaeologist or the Israeli government, but if it doesn't get destroyed from the policies or the plans, it might get destroyed of the tunnels.
So do you think that they're digging underneath the?
And diggings, yeah.
And how do you know this?
Even though they're searching for the temple, and every couple of years or something, they find a new evidence and they show it to the media. So that's basically digging. And where are they going to dig? If they say that the temple is under the Haram Sharif, Al-Aqsa Mosque, that's probably where they're digging to find the temple. So it just makes sense for me, at least. And I don't think they have a plan to destroy it at the time. Maybe in the future.
Divided.
They more or less the beliefs that the people like the extremist Jewish or Israelis believe in, the idea that that's a temple and we're going to rebuild it, that itself is meaning destroying it. And that's...
אני חושב שישראלים או הממשלה רוצים להרוס את מסגד אל-אקצא ולבנות third temple, בית מקדש השלישית.
האם אני חושב שרוצים?
כן, שרוצים.
אני חושב שהממשלה ברובה לא. התושבים, זה כבר שאלה אחרת. אני לא יודע, אני יודע שיש חלק קטן בתושבים שרוצים, אבל לדעתי זה עדיין חלק יחסית מזערי באוכלוסייה.
אוקיי, זה מה שהם רוצים. אתה חושב שמישהו עושה משהו? כי נגיד בירושלים, הפלסטינאים אומרים שאנחנו חופרים מתחת לזה שיפול ויש לנו תכנון להרוס.
אני חושב שזאת תיאוריית קונספירציה. לא, אני חושב שזה קצת הגזמה של המציאות שלנו.
אוקיי. אתם חושבות, שישראלים או הממשלה רוצים להרוס את מסגד אל-אקצא ולבנות את בית המקדש השלישי?
לא שמעתי על רעיון כזה. אין לי מושג.
אוקיי. את חושבת שהם עושים משהו? הם רוצים לדעת ממרוקו.
מה?
הם רוצים לדעת ממרוקו. הם מדברים הרבה בעולם הערבי שהיהודים רוצים להרוס את מסגד אל-אקצא. יש תוכנית כזה ש...
לדעתי אין תוכנית כזאת. אנחנו יותר מדי כוסיות בשביל שיהיה תוכנית כזאת.
האם זה נכון שאנשים רוצים, יהודים רוצים להרוס אל-אקצא, מסגד אל-אקצא בירושלים ולבנות את בית המקדש השלישי?
לא נכון.
והאם יש תוכנית כזו?
אין תוכנית כזאת. וזהו.
האם יש תוכנית להרוס את מסגד אל-אקצא ולבנות את בית המקדש השלישית?
לא, זה משהו שיקרה מהשמיים, ולהפך, זה אסור לעשות את זה, אסור לדחוק את הקץ, זה יגיע מתי שזה יגיע.
האם אתה חושב שישראלים רוצים להרוס המסגד אל-אקצא ולבנות...
לא רוצים.
אתה חושב שיש תוכנית כזאת? או בממשלה או...
יש תוכנית, כן, היה תוכנית.
מה זאת אומרת היה תוכנית?
היה, בעבר היה תוכנית, תפסו אותם, והיום אין את זה.
כאילו מאיזה פלוגה, איזה...
כן, היה פעם, מהקיצוני...
לא, אבל מהממשלה, כאילו, יש תוכנית.
לא, אין דבר כזה. אין דבר כזה ולא יעשו דבר כזה בחיים, כי זה דבר שפוגע בתדמית של הישראלים. לא יעשו דבר כזה, כי כמו שלנו לא עושים בתי כנסת בחו"ל. ולא צריך לעשות את זה.
אתה חושב שישראלים והממשלה רוצים להרוס את מסגד אל-אקצא ולשים שם, שומעים אותך, ולשים שם בית המקדש השלישית במקום?
אני לא חושב שמעשית כרגע זה מה שהם רוצים, אבל הם בטח מצפים לביאת המשיח, הרבי מלובביץ', מלך המשיח, ואז ייבנה בית המקדש והקדוש ברוך הוא יעזור, וזה יהיה באופן טוב גם לנו וגם לערבים.
אוקיי, החלק השני שהם שאלו זה אם אתה חושב שיש תוכנית כזו להרוס את המסגד.
אני לא חושב.
אוקיי.
אני חושב שלא.
אתה חושב שלא? כאילו משהו גם, כאילו אם זה בממשלה או אם זה משהו פרטי או...
אני חושב שאין מישהו מבחינה מעשית שעומד...
למה? נגיד, למה בן אדם לא יעשה מה ש...
סכנת נפשות.
יכול לענות. אמרת שזה יהיה טוב לגויים. למה זה יהיה טוב לגויים?
כי אז הם יבינו את האמת, מה הרצון של השם ובמי הוא בחר מבחינת האנשים ומבחינת המקום, הארץ וירושלים, למי היא שייכת.
This guy, we're waiting for that.
Me too, man.
Is anyone doing anything? Do you think anyone...
The Temple Institute, they're starting to work on it.
Like archaeological.
You can go there and see. Archaeologically, you can't dig there. Religion things and also...
Why not?
Because of religion and religious laws of Judaism and Muslims together.
What's wrong?
Because it's a holy place, not everyone can go there. Jews are not pure to go there, and
But Jews go there.
They go only in certain places. Or if they're secular, they don't mind the Jewish law.
Yeah. I see.
So anyway, you can
Like you've never been up there?
No, I've never been there.
Different difficulty, not above us right now, but above the Heritage Tunnel, because
not this case.
500,000 people visit a cave underneath their house over there each year. So this is a difficulty.
So what does it cause? Oh, noise.
For once, they can hear them.
Okay.
No, this is very sad.
I think what you're referring is actually the work that's done in the city of David, Silouan. There was a drainage channel that exists there for 2,000 years, and just a few years ago they cleaned it up in order to allow people to enter. And when they started to clean it, suddenly, oh, what's it doing under our houses? And they started kind to say that it can make damage to the house standing above, but, well, the tunnel exists for 2,000 years, and they just clean it, so basically it has no damage to any construction standing on top.
What was inside it? Dirt? Stone?
Excuse me?
Some houses fell down, right? Nothing.
It's very nice, actually. It's very nice. Right now.
Hold on, I gotta hear you and see. Yes, the bridge.
So, guys,
Sorry.
there is a question whether the Jews are digging under the Temple Mount. In order to understand what's going on, we should be here in Jerusalem in order to understand what is the field. Now, we are standing outside the Temple Mount. See, this is the Temple Mount. Now over there you see there is a bridge. That bridge is an access to the Temple Mount. Now a few years ago there was a heavy rain and that bridge collapsed. And they decided to build a new bridge. That's why right now you see there is a temporal construction over there, that's wooden stuff. And in order to make new construction, first of all, they have to make salvage excavations. So they started excavations here, outside the Temple Mount, in order to save the data before building a new bridge. And apparently, some people decided it's a good idea to use this in order to promote incitement, and started to claim that these digs are intended to get inside the Temple Mount and collapse Al-Aqsa.
Under Haram al-Sharif.
Exactly, under Haram al-Sharif, over there. Now, what you see, you can see it by yourself, that the digs are done outside. And they have nothing to do with what is going on inside the Temple Mount. They are totally outside, and actually there is about a layer of 5-6 meters of stone that separates them from the Temple Mount. So theoretically they even cannot get there.
Okay. Are there any excavations actually going on underneath Haram al-Sharif?
Nope. Okay. The only thing that happened there, that it was 1996. That the Muslim authority, Waqf, that is custody of the Temple Mount, decided to expand the underground part of Al-Aqsa. And they did it using the heavy engineering devices, bulldozers, without any supervision of archaeologists, and basically destroyed a lot of data, mostly, by the way, from the Muslim periods. Of course, when you do excavation, such kind of site, you have to do it carefully. You have to make it with archaeological methods, to do it very delicate with spades and so on. Bulldozers just take everything out and remove it from the context. So basically,
but other than that, there's no other archaeological dig going on under Haram al-Sharif?
No, actually, the Muslim authority, Waqf, forbids any entrance under the Temple Mount. We know that there are about 40 cisterns below the ground, and we know it because the scholars in the 19th century, scholars like Charles Warren, Conrad Schick, Charles Wilson, got access from the Turkish authorities over there, but since the 19th century, nobody is allowed to enter.
Okay. Do you think that because the original question is, do you think there is a plan, do you think that Israelis want to destroy Mesgid al-Aqsa and Haram al-Sharif and build a third temple? That's the question, and if there's a plan to do it.
Well, I'm an archaeologist, I'm not the right person to call.
Well, from your living here and what you hear.
Well, Israel has a law that is called the Law of Protection to Holy Sites. So each holy site of each religion has to be protected. Therefore, the Masjid al-Aqsa, Mosque of al-Aqsa, should be protected as much as every Jewish holy site, as much as every Christian holy site, and definitely nobody is allowed to cause any harm to it.
Question though, why do sometimes when those crazy people go up there and try to pray, why do the Muslims up there get really upset and throw things at them?
Because that's what Muslims do.
Okay, can I have a little bit more? I mean, that's the stereotypical thing. Can I have a little bit more psychology in this?
Psychology? Crazy. That's psychology in a bit.
So basically, it's crazy people meeting crazy people.
It's crazy people meeting crazy people. I don't want to get both crazy people together. We're going to end up with a massive, crazy amount of people who's loving to kill each other.
מה זה מעניין אותם הר הבית? איך אמר משה דיין? משה דיין אמר, מה אני צריך את הוותיקן הזה כשהוא היה בשער שכם, כשהוא הלך לכבוש את ירושלים? מה אני צריך את זה? שיריבו פה הנוצרים, המוסלמים, מה אני צריך את זה על הראש? זה הראש של מדינת ישראל. ואנחנו, הבעיה היא באנחנו, שאנחנו לא, גם הרבנים שלנו, שאנחנו אומרים, אסור, מסתלים לך שלט, שאסור לכל אדם להיכנס להר הבית. לכל אדם, אז גם לערבים אסור. אנשים אומרים לי אסור, אנשים אומרים, אבל אסור, הרבנות בסרט, אמרתי בסדר, כשהרבנות תאסור על ערבים, אז גם אני לא אעלה לערבים.
אבל אסור, תאמין לי אסור.
מה אסור?
למוסלמים,
אסור להם לעלות? מותר להם לעלות עד החל, עד ה...
לא, מה אסור להם לעלות בגלל המשטרה, לא מותר להם לעלות.
הם עולים, זורקים אבנים, עושים שם אחים כל
אוקיי, אני מישהו מוסלמי עכשיו יתפלל בכותל. כמה אבנים הוא יקבל?
כן? באמת?
אני חושב שאתה יכול שיעבור, אני אגיד לך מה.
אני מסכים לעשות הסכם, בוא נעשה הסכם, בוא נחליף את הדברים. שהמוסלמים יעברו לפה להתפלל בכותל ואנחנו נעלה להר הבית. מה אתה אומר?
למה כולנו לא באים?
אני אשאר בכותל ואני אשאיר להם את הר הבית. יחד איתך.
את רוצה את הכותל?
אני טוב לי עם הכותל.
ושמה את מחכה להר הבית? תשארי בכותל. לא, למה לא מבקר? של המוסלמים למעלה.
צריך להגיד גם תרבויות שונות.
תרבויות שונות?
זה אותו דבר.
הם הדודים שלנו.
להכיר אותם? אם היית אתמול היית מכירה אותם מאוד יפה. מאוד יפה. היית עולה ב7:30, במקרה הטוב שהיית עולה ב7:30, במקרה הטוב שהיית מגיעה בתוך בשעה היחידה. היית רואה איך הערבים התפרעו כלפי הערבים. איך? אנחנו צריכים להכיר את זה על הראש שלנו. דרך אגב, בתוך המעבה ההר, הערבים חופרים והם זורקים את השאריות של בית המקדש בקדרון שלא יזרק.
רגע, תסבירו לי למה אתם עולים.
כי זה המקום הכי קדוש ליהודים.
רגע.
היה שם בית מקדש פעם.
כן, אני יודע.
תפילה שם זה כמו משהו...
בסדר, אז ניסיתם לעלות. ניסיתם לעלות, ומה קרה?
המדינה לא מאפשרת לעלות, כי מדינה כל הזמן יש לה איזו חלישות כזאת, פחדנות כזאת, כל שעם ישראל ילחם על הגאולה שלו, על העצמאות שלו, על החופש שלו, על האמת שלו, אז אנחנו פוחדים מכולם. יש לנו איזו חלישות כזאת.
אבל אתם רוצים ללכת לשם להתפלל?
כן. אנחנו רוצים להיות שם, כי זה המקום זה הבית שלנו, זה הבית של היהודי שם.
אבל זה לא הבית, רגע, זה לא הבית של מצ'ו שלהם. זה לא הבית גם של המוסלמים נגיד?
לא.
למה?
כי שם היה בית מקדש, ובתקופה יותר מאוחרת אז הם בנו שם, אבל אפילו אתה יכול לראות אפילו שהם מתפללים, אז האחוריים שלהם הם כנגד מקום המקדש והם פעמים למכה. זאת אומרת, המקום שלהם זה מכה.
לא, יש להם גם עוד משהו, כל מקום
כן, לא, רגע, אני לא צריך לשמוע את זה. מה שאני שואל אותך, למה זה גם של המוסלמים? למה?
כי בית תפילה יקרא לכל העמים.
הם גם יכולים להיות,
בית תפילה יקרא לכל העמים.
אבל צריך שיהיה בית מקדש.
שנתן את זה לעם ישראל.
שהם גם יכולים להיות.
נגיד שזה בית מקדש, אז המוסלמים והנוצרים מוזמנים שם?
כן,
מוזמנים. בסוכות, חג הסוכות, מקריבים 70 פרים כנגד 70 האומות.
אוקיי, לא צריך דיטלס. רגע, זה מסובך מדי. אני צריך פושטי. רגע, אתם רוצים, יש לי שאלה, כאילו, אתם רוצים להרוס מה שיש שם, מסגד אל-אקצא וזה, ולבנות את ה...
אולי את הזהב.
אנחנו רוצים באמצע המקום ברור שלנו, זה אמור להיות פה רק יהודים, המוסלמים יכולים לבוא להתפלל, אבל צריכים לדעת ששייך השם נתן.
רגע, ומה עם אל-אקצא שהוא פה? זה לא הזהב.
הם בנוי, המוסלמים יש להם נטייה שכל מקום שקדוש ליהודים, לכאורה זה נהיה גם קדוש למוסלמים.
אוקיי, לא, בסדר.
שנייה.
שאלתי אותך שאלה, אתה לא עונה.
אני אסביר לך, אתה לא תתן דקה, אני אמור לענות לך בכן ולא. עכשיו, אז המוסלמים, לא, אבל זו שאלה יותר מוכרת. עכשיו אז המוסלמים, כל מקום שקדוש ליהודים הם נמצאים שם. זאת אומרת שזה לא באמת קדוש להם, הם יכולים להתכבד, לעשות את זה במקום אחר.
השאלה ספציפית, אתם רוצים להרוס מסגד אל-אקצא, כן או לא?
אנחנו רוצים לבנות פה, אם זה אומר שהם יצטרכו לזוז, הם יצטרכו לזוז. אני לא יודע מה החשבון,
מה, לא צריכים להרוס?
החשבון הוא פשוט, אם הם יצטרכו לזוז בגלל שאנחנו צריכים לבנות פה, אז הם יצטרכו לזוז. לא, זה לא משנה, אם זה יימצא, אז יצטרכו לזוז.
רגע, זה השאלה, זה מה שאני רוצה. זה השאלה, בית המקדש, זה איפה שאלה אל-אקצא או איפה שאלה?
לא, זה אל-אקצא בחוץ.
בסדר. כי השאלה באה, אני שואל בשביל מישהו שגם גר במרוקו, ששואל אם יהודים רוצים להרוס אל-אקצא.
אנחנו לא רוצים להרוס אל-אקצא, רק סתם להגיד למוסלמים, כל מקום שקדוש לנו הם בונים שם מסגד. אנחנו יכולים לבנות להם משהו יותר גדול, יותר יפה במקום אחר. הם לא צריכים לעבוד דווקא איפה שקדוש לנו, לדחוף את ה...
גם הקברים של אבותינו נהיים אחרי זה מסגדים.
מערת מכפלה, אם זה מערת מכפלה, כל כלא שמואל הנביא, שמים שם יוסף הצדיק, שמים שם מסגד. בבקשה, הם רוצים, אנחנו נבנות להם משהו באמת יפה, הם לא צריכים להידחף איפה שאנחנו צריכים. מה שקדוש לנו, לדחוף את ה...
לא משנה. ככה, כי זה מקום שלנו.
כן, זה לא מגיע אליהם, הם מגיעים.
אני לא אכפת לי, שלחו
אין שום מקום אחר.
כן, זה לא קדוש להם, הם מחפשים סתם להציג לנו, מחפשים לעצר לנו כל מקום שקדוש לנו, הם בונים מסגד.
אבל יש תוכנית לעשות את זה?
לא, התוכנית הוא לא.
לך יש?